The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Staring Into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Marco Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
Matt Brandenburg.
Or known as Brad or Brandon or whatever else you want to call me. But hey.
What about Berg? Would Berg be okay?
No, I draw the line at Berg.
What if we call you the Berg?
That might be okay.
I don't think that's been taken yet.
No, I haven't heard that one yet. Everything else, people I work with apparently don't know who I am, so they call me everything other than my name. Even though my name shows up on emails or on Teams or on it's everywhere, but still can't read it.
The one I get a lot is Mick. Somehow people confuse Michael with Mick.
First three letters, that's all they need.
Apparently.
Pretty much. And we also have a very special guest today with Jessica Guess.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
This will be a really fun discussion.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about this story. This is a good story.
It's really yes, as am I.
So today we'll be discussing The 8 People Who Murdered Me, excerpt from Lucy Westenra's diary by Gwendolyn Kiste. If you haven't read it yet, you can read it on Nightmare Magazine's website at no charge. And it is a fantastic little story.
And it's got is it in any of her collection? I can't remember.
Not yet, but I think it was just put into the Best American Sci-Fi of 2019 collection.
Okay.
Best American Sci-Fi Fantasy.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you can buy it there.
Yeah. And by the time this airs, I think her book is actually coming out.
By the time we're recording this, she just put out a new book.
Yeah, but I don't think it came out just yet, right?
The which one?
Whatever the novel is that The Bone Set in Feathers.
Yeah, that just came out a couple 2 weeks ago, I think. Start of November for us.
You are all lying.
Oh, it's out.
I thought it was coming out next year. Well, never mind. I'm in my own world.
Yeah,
she has another book coming out next year, though. So by the time this comes out, her next book will probably be out.
That's totally what I was talking about.
Yes. No doubt.
100%.
Real good cover there, Matt.
Thanks.
You're welcome, Matt. So, I have a hell of a recommendation from what I saw this last week.
Uh-oh.
David Cronenberg's son is a movie director, and I had no idea.
Yeah, I wanted to see this movie.
Yeah. And so, I saw Possessor.
Nice.
By Brandon Cronenberg.
And?
Holy fuck. This is probably my favorite sci-fi horror movie of 2020.
Oh, man.
I saw the uncut version, so there was a lot more penis and probably a little more violence than the rated R version.
All right.
The movie's fucking wild. It takes place in the near future, and this company is a company that contracts out assassinations. And to pull the assassinations, what they do is they install an implant in someone's head. And the assassin will go into a machine and use their consciousness to possess the target's body and then use the body to carry out the assassination.
Oh.
And it is violent as fuck.
So question, they possess their target and then they use the body to kill the target, so it looks like a suicide, or? Well,
what they do is there's two targets. There's a target they possess, and then the hit target is the target who they're supposed to assassinate. who's typically someone close to the possessed, or someone who the possessed would come in.
I see. I was wondering that.
And then they carry it out like it's a murder-suicide type thing.
Okay.
So like the possessed can't live after all said.
Oh, that's even worse. Yeah.
So, and also the people who are possessed, like they lose control of their own body, but they're still able to see everything their body does.
Oh,
weird. Terrible.
So they're like some sort of puppet?
Pretty much.
Oh, man.
Wow.
How do they get them to put the thing in their head?
It's typically the person will either be going into a doctor for a procedure, or like they'll get knocked out and like not know anything is really happening. But while they're under the procedure, this implant's installed in their head, which ends up having their body taken over. I'm not going to give any spoilers because this movie is really windy, but there's a plot twist that happens that's like, holy fuck. All I'll say is the new possessed body, our assassin does not have complete control of it.
Interesting.
The only big actor in this movie is Sean Bean. The movie's really good and shockingly violent. Like, I haven't seen the movie this violent in a long time.
Wow.
So he's the guy that's always dying in movies. Does he die in this one?
I was just wondering that. I'm really curious.
He's the assassin target. He's the person who's supposed to be assassinated.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how he dies.
There's a scene that involves a fire poker and an eyeball.
Oh, wow.
Man.
Oh, wow.
That sounds intense.
And there's something they showed in this movie that I haven't seen in any movie, like violence-wise, I haven't seen before in a movie. Like, I was legit shocked.
Nice.
During some of this movie. And it's rare for me to find a movie that like pushes the boundaries of violence and also the boundaries of sex. There is a lot of sex in this movie too. But it's rare to find a movie that pushes the boundaries of both sex and violence in a more artistic way than like an exploitive way.
Huh.
This movie keeps things like artistic. But it's fucked up. But highly recommend. It's on VOD. By the time this comes out, it should be available for streaming. But I bought it on Vudu for like $10.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. The disc comes out December 8th. Now, this cover is pretty wild. It has, I think it's a woman on the cover, but her face is like all distorted, kind of like a glitch art style.
That's a scene from the movie. You'll see when you get there.
Right.
One thing I will say that's cool in this movie is they use no CGI.
Oh, nice.
Good,
it's all practical effects. There's parts where like they're trying to show the consciousness being transferred into the body, where they made a whole wax model of the body and then they melt the wax.
Oh.
Huh.
So like they legit did 100% practical effects in this movie.
Cool.
I don't know if I like the wax melting thing.
You're going to have to deal with it, Matt.
It's one of those weird quirks I have.
Every week we find something new about you, Matt.
We do.
Oh, man. And it's such a stupid thing, too. But it's true. I don't know. It's thrown me off of, like, Cool Whip and whipped cream and stuff, too.
So strange.
This is all true. I can't eat any of that. I can't see any melting stuff like that. It really messes my head up.
So if a doll came at you with a jar of Cool Whip, that would just be like your worst day ever.
Especially if it was melting. Oh, God. Seriously. Oh, God. I like there's in that Tim Burton Willy Wonka, there's a scene where those puppet things melt, and that movie is goofy, but that's one part where I'm just like, I had to look away. I don't know. I got a lot of weird stuff in me.
Cool Whip and mannequins, all right. So, Mike, any recommendations from you?
Mr. Cables by Ronald Malfi.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is. This was kind of like a classic Stephen King setup, or vintage Dean Koontz before he went insane with dogs. And it involves a New York Times bestselling author is at a signing for his latest release when an elderly woman comes up and wants him to sign her copy of a book called Mr. Cables. The only problem is the author never wrote this book, despite his name being on the cover and on each of the pages inside, and his author bio and photo, and making it all very clear that it is his book, but he has absolutely no memory of this title. So he takes the book from her and exchanges it with her with a new copy of his latest release. And she's kind of happy to be rid of it because she said it's the most frightening, repulsive thing she's ever read. So he has to kind of go on a search to figure out what the hell this book is, if it's something that he somehow forgot, or if it's something else.
Ooh.
It is a really cool take on some classic horror tropes, but I don't want to give away what exactly those tropes are. But it is compulsively readable. It's a really quick novella, only like 80 pages, but I mean, once you sit down and start this thing, you're not going to want to stop until you find out what the hell's going on here. My only complaint is I found the ending to be just a little bit too simplistic. I kind of would have liked there to have been some deeper repercussions to this, but overall, it's a really, really good read. I was very happy with this one.
And wait, it's called Mr. Tables?
Cables.
Oh,
C-A-B, yep, C-A-B-L-E-S.
Okay.
Like your internet cable.
Not like tables.
No, not like your internet table, like your internet cable.
Okay. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool, but cables works too.
Yeah. I actually read Mr. Cables as well, and I agree with everything that you said. It is. I'm also happy that I'm not the only person who compares Malfi to like Stephen King.
This one, right off the bat, you kind of get this, okay, is this going to be kind of like a dark half setup, or is it going to be kind of like Koontz's Mr. Murder? But he takes it off in its own direction and makes it his own thing.
But even like style-wise, like if ever I recommend Malfi to people, I always compare him to Stephen King. I'm like, if you're looking for someone who reads a bit similar to Stephen King, you can't go wrong with Ronald Malfi.
Yeah.
And he's always, everything I've read by the guy is fantastic.
Yeah, I've only read a few things by him. And of course the titles escape me, but one of them was one of his last Dark Fuse releases, and then he had a wider release with a big publisher a couple years ago that I really liked. I'll be damned if I
The one that was in Alaska?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, whatever the fuck it was called.
I forget the title now too, but that one was really good.
But he's an author that I've been intending to read more of for quite a while, so I was happy to finally sit down with this new release of his.
Awesome. Nice. It is a really good one. And Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I read a little book called Centralia, Cullen Bunn edited.
How was that?
It was... I'm sorry.
Well, every story was great besides that one story.
Yeah.
Yes, it's actually really good.
Now this has multiple authors in it, right? Did you want to?
Yes. So this has six. I get what you're digging at. I'll get to you.
Oh, no, not me. I'm just saying.
Cullen
people
Bunn.
might want to know who's involved besides Cullen Bunn.
He put this together. Brian Keene's in it. Cullen Bunn's in it. Brian Quinn from Practical Jokers is in it. Adam Caesar, or however you pronounce his last name. I've heard it a different way.
Well, we know not to rely on Richard for last name pronunciations.
Never rely on me. Never rely on me.
So him, Michael Patrick Hicks is in this, and then I'm going to draw a blank on. It's like Hector something with an A.
No, Heath Amodio.
Heath Amodio. Look at that. Don't count on names for me either.
Or Amadio. I'm not entirely sure. It might be Amadio.
So that guy, Keith Amadio.
I got that pronunciation from Richard. So if Heath is listening and needs to make a correction.
Hey. No, you did not.
Let Richard know.
Don't throw me under that bus, Michael.
Yeah. So they're all in it. It's 6 stories, all based on towns in a town called Centralia in different states. And there's something evil lurking underneath these towns. And each story has sort of like a hero, a kind of a character that you're following that's fighting the evil. Either they don't know the evil's there, or they don't know what the evil is, or in, say, Brian Keene's case, he is pulling out one of his characters, Levi blah, 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 blah. I can't pronounce that.
Stoltzfus.
Yep, that guy. So he is in it, but yeah, I dug all of it. Mike, your story was probably one of my favorites. Not to blow smoke up your ass or anything.
No. Go on.
But I really want to see more with. It's Hannah, right? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
See more with Hannah. I love how you pull into sundown cities and what that means and how that ties into Centralia. I also really liked Keene's story is great. I've actually never read any Levi stories, and I kind of am interested in reading more about this Amish powwow magician. I did find it very interesting and fun to kind of read Brian Quinn's story, just because I know him from Impractical Jokers or Tell 'Em Steve Dave. So he's sort of part of the Kevin Smith crew as well, and so he's done some comic books with those guys. But his story was kind of fun. It was a little weirder style about a clockwork robot that is fighting evil. But it was fun. Cullen Bunn's story was great. I feel like he's got a nice Easter egg in there with Levi showing up into this town.
Oh,
I think he makes a reference of seeing an Amish person and I think it's a white horse, which I have no idea if Levi has a white horse, but the way he called it out seemed very specific, and I was like, oh, that's neat. I almost was wondering if he was going to try to pull in all your characters in one way or another, but he doesn't. And the one complaint, maybe not complaint, but I'm guessing he's planning on doing more of these Centralia stories. So because there is sort of an overarching narrative, even though you guys probably didn't. I don't know if you guys all got some background history and you had to work with or not. Did you?
No, we actually didn't. But if it sells well, there is a plan to do more. There is a plan overall.
Yeah.
But we didn't get any kind of mission statement as to what we're doing and how our stories should relate. So we just all kind of did our own thing.
So, which is crazy to think about then, because even though your stories are all different, they all sort of pull in what he was going for. Because he does have like a 1-page intro on what's happening with these towns and what's kind of underneath the surface. So it's kind of fun to see that, and nice to know that you guys kind of all sort of followed that without knowing to follow that.
Ka is a wheel. It's our guide.
Yeah, right. And yeah, Cullen Bunn did a pretty good job at sort of wrapping it up, sort of leaving it nice and wide open for more stories. I always kind of like these type of anthologies where it's themed to a point of like centered on a town. A couple years back, Storgy came out with, I believe it is called, I think it was Shallow Creek, and it was all about this town. And I know they gave a lot to their authors to kind of tie their story in, but it was all centered around this town. And some of the characters in some stories showed up in other stories. So it's kind of fun reading that because it's kind of like a bigger story told by a bunch of different people. And so it's all their different styles. So anyway, Centralia, that felt very similar to that, even though you guys did not get as much detail as they did for the other one.
Yeah. Well, I think Colin knew if he gave us that kind of roadmap, we would have just ignored it anyway. So,
but yes, so that was one of the ones I read this week.
Awesome. Well, thank you for checking it out. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Problem. Yeah, I dig it a lot. There's multiple. Your story, of course, I want to see more of. Brian Keene introduces a new character that I think would be really interesting to see. Heath gives us a girl who's blind that can see through her grandmother's eyes, which she ripped out of her grandmother's head. So that one might be a fun one to see more characters with, or see that character go on to other stuff. So it's kind of nice to see this could possibly grow into something cool.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get enough copies out there. I think we're all looking forward to continuing on with this. We know where it's headed and we want to get there.
Nice.
Awesome. I got to get to that soon. It's on my Kindle. It's on my next to read. Any recommendations from you, Jessica?
Right now I'm doing this thing where I'm trying to do this self-study and see what got me into writing horror, because someone asked me that on a panel a few months ago. And I had the answer, but I was kind of I don't know, I was just curious as to why. So I started reading horror when I read R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike when I was really young. So I'm actually going back right now and I'm rereading some Fear Street books from R.L. Stine and some Christopher Pike books.
That's
and
awesome.
Right now, yeah, and the thing is it's so funny to see, because I think there's some part of my mind where sometimes when I'm reading a horror book, there's a part of me that actually compares it to an R.L. Stine book, or especially the Fear Street books. Is this campy enough? Is this does this have enough gore in it? Especially the Fear Streets had more gore than Goosebumps. Is there a shock value? How do you end off your chapters? And I'm this is all from R.L. Stine. Is this my holy grail of what of what horror is supposed to be? But anyway. So right now I'm reading Cheerleaders, the First Evil. And yeah, it's about these twins who they moved to Fear Street, or the town, and their house is on Fear Street, and they join this cheerleading squad in the middle of the year. And the only reason they were able to is because they were state champions at their old school. But when they join, the new girls, the other cheerleaders don't want them on there because, for them to join, one of their friends had to be cut. And then, these murders start. Oh. And, yeah, with the one that just happened, it was, it was a freak accident on a bus, but it kind of looked like it was one of the sisters' fault. And, yeah, so now all hell's breaking loose and, yeah, it's pretty creepy. I honestly don't remember this one, so I don't know how it ends. So, but yeah, there's Cheerleaders the First Evil, Cheerleaders the Second Evil, and Cheerleaders the Third Evil. So it's a trilogy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I want to do a book about cheerleaders. I want to do evil cheerleaders myself. So I saw this and I was okay, this'll do. This might help me.
I love it. I don't think I've read any of those Fear Street books.
They are great fun. They are so fun. Like I said, I really like when I love all horror, obviously, but I really like when there's some fun involved, and they are all fun. Sometimes you'll have, what I like about R.L. Stine is that the way he ends off his chapters, he'll end something. It's she fell down the stairs and the last thing we heard was a sickening crack. And then the next chapter, either the girl's dead or she's fine. It might be she's completely fine. The crack was something fell or whatever, or she's dead, her neck's broken. And you never know. So that's one thing I liked about those Fear Street books.
I mean, that's a good way to keep you going.
They are. They're surprisingly gory too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I got introduced to R.L. Stine through Goosebumps, and when I got to Fear Street, I was Jesus.
Yeah,
it's a whole different monster.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because his audience is a little bit older. Goosebumps are middle grade, and then Fear Street's supposed to be for teenagers and maybe young adults or whatever. So I guess he got more freedom to do that. But yeah, he went. Some of them are pretty messed up. Yeah.
You know, I always thought this kind of funny. When I was in 3rd grade, our teacher made us write like a book report on an autobiography. Mm-hmm. So we went to the school library and I found an autobiography of R.L. Stine.
Oh, nice.
And she said no at first because she thought it was a Goosebumps book. And I was like, no, it's really an autobiography. Like, and the only thing I remember from it is him saying how he got into writing horror. And he was working, what was that like puppet show, Eureka's Castle or whatever?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He was working on that show. And a little kid won like tickets to visit the set. And when they realized that the puppets weren't real, they just got really scared and sad and cried and screamed. And like wanted to like make more children do that with his books.
Wow. All right.
Oh, I love that. That's hilarious. Oh man.
That's the only thing I remember from that book. But no, like R.L. Stine, love him or hate him, he's inspired tons of kids. I got into horror because of R.L. Stine. Tons of kids got into the genre through his books, and you got to respect him for that.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know. Right now I'm trying to see, like, when I was in grad school, one of my professors, she would say, like, a good thing for you to do as a writer or artist is to go back and look at what's in your groundwater. So what are the things that inspired you when you to get into your artistry, or like, what are the things that like are like deep down in you that you consider kind of like the pillars of whatever your art is, and what put them there? Right. So what is actually what got them there? So that's what I'm kind of trying to do with this, is to see, okay, what do I believe in when it comes to horror, and why is it there? So I have to start with him.
That's awesome. That's a great idea.
That is awesome. It is. I should revisit my pile of Goosebumps books I have in storage. You can look at one of those books on like an hour at this point now. They read so fast and they're so short.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one last recommendation from me. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm halfway through. And The 5 Turns of the Wheel by Stephanie Ellis. This book is like The Wicker Man meets Midsummer.
What?
And if that intrigues you, read it. It's fucking phenomenal.
How does that work?
It's pretty much, it takes place in like this countryside English village, and there's a tradition in this village that involves the turning of the wheel, and the wheel's supposed to have 5 turns, and the idea is like kind of like the seasons going through, but the people who actually like follow the religion are using it to summon an old god who's living deep beneath the surface. And they're trying to summon this god and his minions to come into the planet and wreak havoc. And it follows a mother who knows the secrets and her daughter who's pregnant, who doesn't really know what's really happening. And it's a solid read so far. Like, it hooked me from the first sentence, and every time I read it, I can't put it down.
That sounds neat. I like that. I like the folk horror, so.
One last shout out I'll give them before we dive in is The Possession of Natalie Glasgow by Haley Piper.
Oh, yeah.
I listened to the audiobook narrated by Gemma Amor.
Nice.
And
that seemed like it was a surprise for Haley Piper.
It is one hell of a book. Probably the most original possession story I've ever experienced. Highly recommend.
Nice.
I'm excited to read that one. I'm excited to read it. I have that one, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
It's really good, and I don't want to say too much because it's easy to spoil. But if you think you've experienced all the types of possession stories, this one puts a new twist on it that's really well done.
Nice.
And I highly recommend it.
You were on a bit of a possession kick.
I mean, what can I say? I enjoy the idea of losing control of one's own body. So let's turn gears, and we can talk about The 8 People Who Murdered Me by Gwendolyn Kiste. Before we get started in the story, why did you choose this story, Jessica?
Well, I read it recently, and I had read it a few months ago. I'd been looking for erotic horror, and someone suggested this, and I was like, I read it, and I was like, I don't know that I would consider this erotic horror necessarily. So I don't know why they told me that. But I liked it when I read it. So
Was it Richard who recommended it?
No.
It was not me this time.
Okay.
But I reread it just because I was looking for more like retellings and things like that. And so I reread it, and I was going through it, and just, I don't know, it captured me in a way this time that before, like I said, I liked it, but this time I was just noticing more things about how she like gives Lucy a new voice in this, and like how, I don't know, there's some things in here that I think are to be said about like how a society, the different ways a society can fail a woman or a young girl. That's like looked at through all these 8 ways. And I just thought that was really amazing, you know? So I wanted to shout this one out and look at it a little bit deeper.
This is a really, really good story. And like, I like how she connects it to Dracula. I'm a fan of the original Dracula book, but I like how she like uses in the book Dracula's first victim, and she gives this person a new voice in the story.
Yeah, because like it's. I mean, we all kind of do this with as horror writers, where like there's usually a character who is there just to be a victim, right? Yeah. And they're kind of just to be like either the opening sequence or the first victim that, you know, spurs the whole thing into motion. Like there's a poem that's called I remember the first line of it's like, nothing gets a story started like a dead girl. And then this, I need to actually look up what that poem, who's it by and what's the title. But I remember the whole poem is about how like this girl, whether she's like, you know, victim number 1 on CSI or like, you know, the girl in the first chase scene in a slasher or whatever, she doesn't really get a lot of voice. She's just there just to die, just to start the story. And I guess Lucy is like that with Dracula, in that, I mean, we know her, we know a little bit about her, but I feel like Gwendolyn gives her so much more of a voice. And it's almost like giving a voice to the rest of those kind of like first victims who don't really have a lot, or at least that's what I was taking from it in a way.
You know, I that's what I really dug out of this, was there's so much more to this character, and there's more feeling and thought put into like, I mean, it's what's really interesting is this kind of look at marriage, and marriage at the time of kind of being like sold off almost. I thought that was a really neat story, and I will put out there, and my horror card can be taken away. I've actually never read Dracula. It embarrassingly took me longer than it should have to realize what was happening in the story. I was like, I mean, like I figured it out once the music kind of went silent and he like grabbed her, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a vampire. And then I was like, oh wait, this is a Dracula story. And I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Well, so Gwendolyn does do a very subtle job with making it into a Dracula story. That name is never uttered, I don't think, over the course of this whole story. So
no,
it's not.
It does take a minute if you're not familiar with it. Thankfully, I had seen the movie.
I mean, but that's one good thing. You know, we've done this with a couple of H.P. Lovecraft stories now, where we did what was the Hound one? But
was it the Hound and the Poppy C. Bright version?
Yeah. So with that, and what with this one is too is you don't have to read Dracula to appreciate the story. So like I said, not having read it, I still know everything that's happening in the story, and I still gathered enough detail to be like, oh, okay, it's obviously it's a vampire story, but it's also the story about Lucy and her dealing with like having to get married and what happens when her life is changed by this mysterious man. And so it definitely stands on its own, which is great. Like it's always a good thing when you read a story like that.
Yeah. Giving this new perspective. And I also can take my card away too. I did not read Dracula, but I've watched like every version of it that's ever come out. So like the old black and white, 1930s one with Bela Lugosi, the one with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, the one like everyone that's come out. Yeah,
Gary Oldman and his crazy
Gary
man bun.
So his hair. Sorry, 1 second, just to talk about that for a little bit. His hair. He either had that man bun, or he had the really straight, long, like it's almost like Snoop Dogg and Bones, like the really long with a curl at the end. Oh, it looked amazing. His hair in that scene.
I will say, it's been a while since I had read Dracula, but I've seen almost all the movie adaptations. So
does he have that hair in the book?
The book is all told through journal entries and newspaper clippings.
No mention of the hair.
So mention of the hair. Before we get back to this story, have you guys seen that new Dracula BBC series?
No.
That was on Netflix.
No, I haven't.
It is something else.
Does he have the hair in that?
Not really. But so I'm just going to spoil this real quick. The first 2 episodes follow the story pretty closely, with like Dracula doing his Dracula thing in Germany and then going on the boat to England to like find people over in England. But then the show has it where the boat sinks and Dracula wakes up in modern day. And the 3rd episode is Dracula in modern day. And it is so fucking cheesy. There's like one part where he's like he has a cell phone.
Oh, nice.
And he's on Tinder and he goes, I like how they have meal to go apps now.
Oh god.
Oh god. Yeah.
It's really fucking cheesy.
Okay, wait.
How does it compare to Dracula 2000?
Dracula 2000 is actually fun.
Okay.
It's bad, but it's fun.
Yeah.
How does he know what a cell phone is?
They never explain that. He just has one now.
Like they don't show that scene. I'd rather see that scene of him like trying to navigate buying a cell phone from a store.
No, they don't have him do that.
Oh.
All of a sudden he's in England, then it fast forwards a bit and he's like rich and wealthy and living in a super nice apartment in London.
Wow.
Doing his Dracula thing.
They could have done something cool with it too, like if they did like the Sleepy Hollow route.
Yeah.
Where he's so confused by modern day.
Yes.
Yeah.
That show, man. I just had to think about you were talking about that show and not the Tim Burton one. But
No, the TV series.
That was good.
Went off the deep end.
Yeah, I did like that, his confusion on the real world. That would have been great. They should have did that with Dracula. It's not like he's going to know everything.
I know.
Be a fish out of water.
Yeah, they could have had Dracula do like an Ichabod Crane rant about the banks and taking a pen from the teller.
his commentary on modern society, where he's like, "I'm not nearly as evil as the rest of this world is."
Yeah, taxation.
Exactly.
All this stuff happening right now. What does it matter if I'm around?
We didn't fight a revolution so you could charge 8% on a latte.
Wasn't there a whole thing about tax on sugar and flour? And he's like, that's what we fought about.
Yeah.
Where's my representation?
It could have been a very cool show. Oh, man.
Missed opportunities all around.
But anyway.
Yeah.
And Sleepy Hollow had Clancy Brown, which I doubt Dracula was cool enough to get.
Did you ever see Dracula Dead and Loving It?
The one with Leslie Nielsen.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I saw that when I was really young. I should rewatch that one.
The best part about our show is how we're able to have these in-depth intellectual conversations.
And talk about Mel Brooks movies at the same time.
Yeah.
It was so great. Steven Weber is Van Helsing, and
The guy from Wings?
yeah. Oh man, so good. Go back and watch it. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to have to. Maybe it's on Netflix.
Gwendolyn's
Anyway,
like,
back
listening
to-
to this.
back to
She's
the
so
Gwendolyn Kiste
excited. And she's like, they're not talking about this at all.
Sorry, Gwendolyn.
I mean, Matt, remember the episode she came on that we were just like had that whole tirade about things that didn't have to do anything with her story?
Yeah, she knows. She's been on the show. She knows the score.
She knows how it goes.
Good.
To her credit, the one thing that I did really find the most impactful for me was her examination of marriage, which we brought up earlier, and the way marriages were conducted in the Victorian era.
Yes.
And I think what most crystallized it for me was when, after Lucy is bitten, she is mourning the loss of her relationship with Mina, who has gone off to get married herself. And that's when she really starts to realize her death as it is. A husband has been selected for her, and it's after that that she starts to notice she's losing her reflection in the mirror and her life disappearing, which I thought was a really powerful bit of commentary on Victorian marriage. At one point, she even calls marriage her death.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that's what she defines as her death versus being bit by Dracula and drained of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even just like you say she was picked. I mean, it was more like she just randomly spun around and just whoever she landed on was it.
Yeah.
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 And that also, like you said, kind of goes into that marriage at the time where it's basically saying it doesn't matter who I pick; they're all going to be the same in the end.
And when the doctor, when they think she's just sick, the way that they're trying to save her becomes a metaphor for rape.
Oh man, that was intense.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But it shows you that her status amongst these men is that she is property. She's just cattle for them, which is an interesting juxtaposition to how vampires view humans.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a good thought.
You're onto something, Mike.
I got a moment now and then.
Because I was just more focused on like you said, like almost the rape of it all. I was just like, oh man, this is intense, and I don't like this.
Yeah, I mean, for a blood transfusion, that's a really hardcore violation. The way it's written, and it's subtly done. I mean, it's not an overt kind of extreme horror rape method, but it is still very much her autonomy being taken away from her. At the force of these men who she writes has been her suitors. You know, these are all the men that were trying to marry her that have come to hold her down and force blood into her.
Yeah, I think that like not only that, obviously the attack from Dracula, who is characterized with like the you point of view in this, like that's also, it feels also like an assault as well, like the way a sexual assault, the way that she describes like coming home and trying to talk to Mina, and then like, but Mina's asleep, and then like going into like my mother, she could have warned me about this, like, you know, like kind of talking about how like I would assume, especially in those days, like those are things you probably don't talk about, you know. These are things you probably don't warn your young girls about more than like, oh, don't go out at night, you know, or don't do this, but you don't really explain the full spectrum of why and how and all these kinds of things. So like I said, it just goes back to like all the different ways in which like society kind of fails girls and women. But yeah, just really powerful stuff. It's just like it really just hit me when I was reading. I was just like, this is amazing how she's using this one character to like do all of these things.
It is a really potent work. Gwendolyn is so damn good.
Oh, Gwendolyn's amazing.
And I love, too, the way Lucy, she gains her agency through death. Like, it's not until after Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves have tried to burn her alive that she's able to come back from that death and go after everyone. It's like, at the end of it, Dracula isn't running from Van Helsing. He's running from her, you know?
From her, yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm going to make a very big leap here, a very big stretch. But one of the things I love about this is kind of like how it shows you what your choices are, or choices were as a woman back in this time, how basically you either had to get married to like have any kind of like status, money, whatever, or like she mentions how like Mina is seen as a good girl where she's not, in a way. And like you don't really have that many choices. And when I reread this, I looked up Bram Stoker for whatever reason, which led me to like, apparently he was friends with this weird journalist who was like really into like sensationalism. I can't remember his name, but he did a lot of work about talking about like brothels back in the day. And he did like this whole series about like this practice that was happening where like basically madams and I guess old age pimps or whatever, they would like kidnap these girls and like put them into these brothels and stuff like that. And I was just thinking about how like that's horrible, but I also watched like harlots or whatever, like how that's another role of women, right? Like back in this Victorian era, right? And I remember in brothels, they were talking about how like, even though in society, a lot of the women who worked in these brothels, these prostitutes were like, they're seen as nothing, but in a way, sometimes they have a lot more power than married women, because they can come and go as they please. You know, they do kind of what they want. They have money. They can control their own money, usually. I guess it depends on who they're working for. But usually they make their own money. They don't really have to adhere to a man in a way that a wife has to adhere to a man. Like some of them would be kept women in a way where like if they were like some aristocrat's mistress or whatever, they would like get put up in a penthouse and like be able to, like, there was one woman who like she gambled away like thousands of dollars a month, you know, and she only had to see the guy like once or twice a month. But anyway, what I'm circling back because like basically I'm saying like in the end when Lucy dies, it's kind of like they've thrown her away. Society has like given up on her and thrown her away. And that's where she gains her freedom, right? With, like you said, through death. It's almost like kind of going back to the harlots thing. It's only when society leaves you alone as a woman that you can have some kind of freedom. Like when they say, when they throw you away, it's like you're not bound by all these constraints anymore. And I feel like that's kind of one of the things that happens to Lucy, like the harlots I was talking about in the show. They're not bound by these constraints. So in a lot of ways, they have more freedom. And I guess that's kind of like what I was comparing Lucy to. Is like, oh, she's not bound anymore. She like they've completely finished with her. So like she's free to do what she wants.
Well, and it's crazy too, kind of going on that. I'm wondering, because the faceless mob, they come in and they like, it's like they kill her again, and that, you know, I'm just processing that all because it's like. In the story, for those who haven't read it's broken down into like 8 parts for the 8 people, and it's the 8th one where she finally is when she's like, oh, I'm coming after you, Dracula.
Yep.
And that's when she has all of her power. So it's interesting how that happens.
I love the opening for the 8th one was like no one at all, when it's just like, how many ways can you murder a girl? Too many to count, I suppose, but it makes no difference in the end. Because in a countryside full of monsters, there isn't enough time to mourn the ones like me forever.
That whole like faceless mob one is intense.
It is. The whole thing's intense. Like
yeah, the whole concept of them they think they're helping her by burning her,
And she was peacefully asleep. Like she was like,
she was like sleeping.
Finally,
I just want to take a nap in my
left
coffin.
alone.
Leave me the fuck alone. I'm
and here they come.
Right? And that's what I was trying to figure out too. I'm like, are we just not seeing her run around? I'm guessing that she isn't doing that, but there's like a little scene where she talks about how she's dancing in the courtyard. This is before she dies and all this stuff. So I was trying to like wonder, I'm like, well, was she doing that? I'm like, I don't think so. I think the mob's just insane and they just wanted to burn her.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. And that's also when she's like, that's when she realizes Dracula's gone. He's not going to come back and help her. And I think that's right around when she's like, okay, this is it. It's time to lay down some rules.
Yeah, he's on a boat. He's
Time to
skipped
go
down
give
and
Dracula
left her
some
behind.
payback.
One other thing I kind of wanted to point out with this is just like that going back to that section with the doctor. Another thing that I noticed with that one was just that like doctor is not listening, like caretaker is not listening to you.
Yeah.
You know how she says that like he doesn't talk to her. He she doesn't even get his name or anything like that. It's just like he's kind of just talking to the mother, not really involving her in any of the thing, not listening to her, of course, which leads to the transfusion, which is a horrible scene. But going back to like how in the end she's like, how many ways can you murder a girl? And it's like, this is another way, just not listening. I don't know about how white women do with their caretakers or whatever, but there's a whole thing about how like in America, Black women have like this horrible mortality rate when it comes to childbirth and like seeking medical attention, period. Right. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they do not listen to us. Like, I've experienced it myself, like in the, going to the doctor where like, they're kind of just telling you about your body. They're not really listening to you. And I don't know. I kind of saw a little bit of that with this one, that portion.
Yeah. Which is horrifying.
Yeah, that definitely rang true. I mean, we've heard countless number of stories where people go to the hospital or their family physician, something hurts, they're not feeling well. It's like, no, you're fine. Just go home, take it easy. You'll be all right. And then it's like, no. A year later, you have cancer. You only have a few months to live. I'm sorry we couldn't catch it sooner.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you could have run some tests when I came in here and complained.
Yeah, it's crazy. My aunt recently passed away. She had lung cancer. And by the time they caught it, by the time they caught it, it was stage 4. And the thing was like, my mom was telling me that every time she would talk to her, she would hear this cough, but they thought, she kept saying, oh, it's my allergies, and like she'd gone to the doctor last June, and it was they told her she was fine, whatever. And then in July, late July, that's when they actually found the cancer. So it's like, you see this thing of like just not really, I don't know if it's not listening or not taking things seriously or I have no idea, but.
Yeah, I think definitely not listening. There's that whole kind of like intellectual superiority, smugness, and probably not wanting to deal with the paperwork and the insurance companies and who knows what else.
Yeah.
They don't want to make their job more complicated, but it makes everything else worse for everyone else.
Right. It's like, I got a golf appointment at 4. I really don't have time for your cancer right now.
Yeah, exactly. These people.
Well, my tea time's coming up, so whatever.
Hey, look, I didn't become a doctor to deal with sick people.
Yeah. That's honestly what it feels like sometimes. Like,
Oh, God, yes.
One thing I also think is with this story that kind of sticks out too is the 6th part where it's myself and how like everyone blames her but herself.
Yeah.
It's like her mother blames her, the suitors blame her, her best friend blames her, the doctor blames her.
Yeah. I think there's a whole, maybe I'm imagining it now, but a whole segment about like if she hadn't worn what she had worn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she'd only stayed home, says my mother. If she'd only married sooner, says my best friend. If she'd only been a better patient, says an out-of-town doctor. If only she said yes to me instead, say all the suitors I denied.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely that whole victim shaming thing, which is just horrible to think about. Yeah, and that also kind of ties into what you were saying, Jessica, with regarding especially that story or the beginning about the doctor not listening to her. She also says her mother, like she compares her mother to that as well. How mother talks around her, and I think that gets covered too earlier, where it is all about the wedding and getting married, and how Lucy hasn't picked a bride, hasn't picked a suitor soon enough. And I think that all ties into that, everyone blaming her, where it's just like all of this, yet none of them listened to her to begin with. So that might have saved some of this. So yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah,
there's a lot of that internalization of the patriarchy that gets passed down from generation to generation. It's like her and Mina had talked about running away together and being free, but when their opportunity comes, instead Mina goes and gets married.
Yeah. Straight up disappears too.
Yeah.
Just leaves a note, says good luck, and I'm out.
It's like, I got my meal ticket.
Mina, out.
I was trying to figure out, so Mina is the best friend, not a sister?
Best friend.
Were they like, did they all live under the mother's house? Because they were sharing a room. Because there's a whole part where Dracula comes one more time and Mina's in the bed next to them and doesn't do anything.
For some reason, Mina is staying with them, yes? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it to find suitors? Is she there to find a suitor? I don't remember exactly why.
I think her mother's a matchmaker.
Oh.
Or the mother's trying to get them suitors.
I see. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because they talk about the whole party thing in the house, and that's when she runs away at the beginning. Yeah, I kept thinking about and this is so random, but I kept thinking about The Corpse Bride when I was reading this. and I can't remember the Mr. Barkus or whatever, the bad guy. I kept thinking of that character as Dracula. I'm like, oh man, that must have been a terrible Victorian time to live in.
Yeah, I am glad I didn't live then for a number of reasons.
You could have easily gotten syphilis.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not the first one that came to my mind, but yeah. Oh, God.
There's Matt nailing down the important issues of the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was going to say the flu, but we have that currently, so that doesn't count.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
And it's post-plague, so.
Yeah. It wasn't the high mortality rate of life in general. It was that damn syphilis.
Rotting out people's brains. Yes, this was an awesome story. I'm glad you picked it.
It's really good.
And by the way, the poem that I mentioned before, it's called Dead Girls by Kim Adonisio. And it's not the first line. It's towards the middle, but she says, a dead girl can kick a movie into gear better than a saloon brawl, better than a factory explosion, just by lying there. So yeah, that's what I thought of here about how what happens to Lucy kind of kicks the story into gear in that way.
What's interesting is this reminded me a bit of Pretty Mary's All in a Row, which is also by Heist.
Yep.
And The Husband Stitch in whatchamacallit. Her Body and Maria. Yes. They both kind of deal with that kind of concept. One, they kind of deal with the concept of women not having a voice and the terrible things that happen to them. And then also this one, a little bit has, it is a little bit of that storytelling kind of thing that you see in the Husband Stitch, where it, you get all these different stories, kind of urban legends about women. This doesn't have an urban legend in it, but it's just that it is an urban legend basically about the first girl, just like you were saying at the very beginning of this. And, also about this character that is kind of thrown away in Dracula. I'm assuming it reminded me of those ones. It's like a good little 3 set of stories to read that really give a good voice to characters and women in these kind of horror stories, which I like.
And these stories also, so this is me being the English nerd that I am, but these stories remind me of an old novel from the 1890s called The Awakening. I don't know if anyone's read that or not.
Is that by Kate Chopin?
Kate Chopin, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, I hated that the first time I read it. But, when I went to teach it when I was older, I kind of got it a bit more. But it deals with the same concept. It's just a woman trying to find her own agency in a society that denies her said agency. Mm-hmm. And it was fun, too, when I was teaching that book, because the version I had all critical reviews of it at the time. And of course, all the critical reviews were men writing it. And they were like, this book is pornography. This book is terrible. This book's a negative influence on America. But it's just these stories are really great. Pretty Mares All in a Row, The Husband Stitch, the story we're discussing today. These are all great, they take older stories and recontextualize them into a modern day. And this goes into a greater narrative where people have been writing about this and similar topics to this for a long time. And the idea is finally we're using genre to be part of that same conversation.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at in my mind.
I thought this was another great bit of feminist horror from one of the best women horror authors of present day. I am absolutely bowled over by what Gwendolyn did with this. It's such a short piece, but she manages to pull in so many societal examinations and concepts and commentary, not only on Victorian life, but that are still relevant today. They're modern issues that are placed in this temporal context of Victorian England.
Gwendolyn's a fantastic writer. And every time I read new stories by her, I just I need to read more of her stuff.
Yeah, agreed. This was very smartly done. I liked it an awful lot. So thank you very much, Jessica, for bringing it to us.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of want to point out with this is that I love this story, and I love how, like I said, I think you guys really nailed it on the head when you said it's kind of examining this patriarchal society and women's role in it, but mainly white women though, right? Because even reading this, as a black woman, I'm just even though I'm sure, there were black people in England back in the day, but it's just even back then, black women's choices were still so much whatever white women had, it would still be so much less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
There probably wasn't a lot of opportunity to marry someone. There weren't a lot of suitor balls for black women to try and get ahead or something like that. There wasn't a lot. So I feel this is giving voice to a certain sect of voiceless women. Yeah. But I still want to see other voiceless women too, because all the experiences are not the same. Yeah. And I don't know, it just made me think I need to look for more of that. Obviously, Bram Stoker didn't have any black people in his books, I don't think. So maybe not in this context. I was just thinking about how because I was saying, I was applying it to women at the time. Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess that was just something else I was thinking about.
No, that's so true. I mean, like thinking about like like a whole ball. It's like that would only really be happening for rich white people, men and women.
Yeah.
Only white guys would have a giant ball to pick out who they're going to bang for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, and it's you're right. It would be nice to see like different perspectives, different views, even in this era. It's one thing to and we've complimented the story a lot. It is definitely one thing to see kind of like the white woman's view, or even with the white men in this story, but I mean, there's got to be other things happening in Victorian time that just doesn't focus on that, and you don't see it very much.
And maybe I need to look for it more. Maybe I need to, whatever. But I don't know. I am kind of interested to see, because, I mean, other people were around.
Yeah.
So I want to see what was life like. I mean, this Dracula takes place in 1890 something.
Yeah.
So like this is post-slavery I mean, America was the last to do that. So post-slavery for most of the world. So black people are around and doing things. And in England, you have like the colonies that they had, Jamaica, where my family's from, the other colonies that they have. So like maybe people were coming and going. I don't know. It's interesting.
I also feel there's a lot of literature from the Victorian age that was written and is never discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So like to even find some of that stuff would require a lot of digging to be like, who was really talking about this stuff at that time?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to find out though.
Yeah.
I always wonder that, like, especially now, I mean, like being as deep into like indie horror and stuff like that now, I wonder about that for back then. Like, was there a bunch of indie authors writing stuff, and are those books gone? Are they moldering away somewhere? Like, because I think about that for all the books now, it's like in 50, 100 years, are people going to be talking about certain authors, or are they only going to be talking about the big bestsellers? I always wonder that.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the horror genre itself and all of the books that have been lost that were only 20 or 30 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at why can't we get Ruby Jean Jensen stuff back in print? Well, we don't know who holds the copyright to them.
Yeah.
We looked at, the author that we discussed with Todd Kiesling. Like, so much of his stuff has been lost because it's just disappeared. They don't have the technology, stuff that he wrote on a typewriter. They don't know who has the rights to it, so they can rescan it. Carl Edward Wagner, same deal. It's like there is so much of his stuff that is just lost to the ages because they don't know who has the rights. So I would imagine that going back to the Victorian era, 1800s, 1900s, hell, even 1980, there's stuff after that is just gone that we might never get back.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, great. Grady Hendrix was actually talking about that on like a panel where he's like a lot of the horror from people of color in the 80s, and it's some of it's lost, because they weren't marketing it very well. It wasn't, done by big presses. So like right now it's really hard to find. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like going back to what you were saying about like were there indie things like press it or indie stories back there in the day? I feel like maybe, but just not like how it is now. Like, cause there's some stories when you said that, for some reason, who popped into my mind was Anne Bronte.
Yes.
Just because her sisters got so much shine. She wrote a book too. It was published, but no one checked for her like them. So, it's almost like she was the indie author of that family. Her sisters are like big five.
And it's also the way publishing worked back then too was like everything was serialized.
Yeah.
So like you had to buy like the newest edition of this magazine or the newest edition of this newspaper, And then once like the serial was finished, they then collect it in a book and sell the book.
Yeah. It's like the printing press was supposed to be the democratization of voices, but who owned all the printing presses? Who owned all the publishing companies? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because, you know, I'm not saying like it would be neat if there was one back then, and if there was like maybe some voices back then. I mean, I don't know, like it kind of going with what Mike you're saying. It's like, were all the publishers there like white and they're like, we're not going to publish these books, or so I don't know. It would just be interesting, like a research thing to dig into.
Well, I mean, hell, even that facet hasn't changed much in 2020. Where
it even depends like the time and location. Like I forget this author's name, but he released a documentary called like Big in Japan, where he published like 2 books in English, and they bombed. But they were translated into Japanese, and they were like a huge success. And his books in English are out of print now, but like in Japan, his books are still bestsellers.
Huh.
And like he gets all his money from like his Japanese royalties and stuff. But you can't get them in English anymore because they're out of print now.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's even like, I forgot the guy's name right now though, but it's like time and location. It's a whole bunch of subsets into like what is part of the narrative, like what's part of being discussed. Hopefully indie press is changing that a little bit with the new voices that are coming out now.
Yes.
hopefully.
Yeah,
Which is one thing
hopefully.
I like about the small presses is
Yes.
a lot more variety of voices that we get.
Yeah.
A little sidebar on the topic of recontextualizing these classic works of fiction like Gwendolyn did with Dracula here. Did you guys happen to see the series of tweets from the Midnight Society?
Maybe. I see them off and on.
Clive Barker ribbing Bram Stoker for writing gay fiction with Dracula. And Bram Stoker's like,
Oh, yeah.
Bram Stoker's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, what? I mean, like, Harker, you know, Dracula just really wants to get down with Harker, doesn't he? It's like,
I mean, he invites Harker out to his castle.
Book.
Yeah.
He just wants to bite that neck and
He's just thirsty.
yeah.
My God. Oh, I love it.
So good. But thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica.
Thank you. This is super fun. I love talking about stories like this, like
Yes.
examining them a little bit.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. And it's great, too, because you kind of doing this, we get to either find stories that maybe we haven't read or highlight stories that, you know, have come and gone. Like this one came out, 2018?
It's 2019.
2019. Yes, there it is.
2019, yeah.
So like a year ago. So it's just kind of fun to be able to pull it back out for people to be like, hey, look at this. This came out. So, yeah,
Did you read
it's
it?
fun.
Well, you got it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that have come out or will be coming out, Jessica, what's happening on your publishing field?
Well, by the time this comes out, I will have a short story in an anthology called Shiver, done by Nico Bell. My story is called, it's a really cool idea because like it's all horror based in like in the cold, like so cold climate has to do with something, you know. So
I need this so badly. Like Arctic horror is my absolute favorite subgenre.
Yeah, and it's like really good. I've seen some of the stories in there, and it's really good. Some really great authors are part of it. Both like I think some recognizable names and some newer names. So it's really awesome. My story in there is called The Nightmare Man. Not to be confused. I think there was also a movie called that. It has literally no relation. But yeah, so that'll be out in January. Right now, my story, Mama Tulu, is available with Tor Night. It's a part of Come Join Us by the Fire Season 2. I was a part of Tor Nightfire Books, and it's available for free on Google Google Play, Google Books. I don't remember the name, but Google something. Go on Sword Night Fire. Go on Sword Night Fire. Come join us on Fire, and you'll see it. There's some awesome stories in there too. Also by some really awesome names. Cassandra Carr. I think does Gabino Iglesias have something in there? I think so. There's just a lot of one. Yeah. So just awesome names, awesome people all around. And of course, Cirque Berserk is out here, still slashing the game. So
that was a ton of fun.
Thank you. It was fun to write. Like I said, I'm reading these Fear Streets, and I'm just like, I see where this came out in Cirque Berserk a lot, even down to the cover, like how the cover's kind of campy. Because I told Eddie what I wanted for the cover, and he did exactly that. And like, it's like, yeah, this is it. This is the cover. Like, this is where my mind went to. But yeah, so like that's still out here available. Please read it if you haven't. It is a ton of fun. It's about these teenagers who go to an abandoned carnival that has a very gruesome history, and there's some twists and turns. It's a slasher. There's a little bit of love in there. There's a little bit of everything, I think. So, yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, congratulations on the new releases. I'm looking forward to Shiver.
I am too.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And I have my copy of the Nightfire audiobook. Hopefully I can listen to that soon.
Yeah, it's so good. I've been listening to a few of them. Like, I don't drive to work anymore. I work from home, but like if I'm going anywhere, like the grocery store, I'll like pop one in because they are short,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, that's been one of the hardest parts of quarantine for me is having to give up audiobooks because I can't listen to my stuff with kids around.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if it makes you feel better, guess who still has to drive to work? And because of that, guess who got exposed to COVID?
Yeah, I know. Fun
So,
for you.
Yeah, I'll find out Tuesday if I have it.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
Again.
God, I'm so sorry. I hope everything turns out okay.
I do too. The teachers, all of us, are very mad about the whole situation.
Yeah.
The long and short of it is a staff member tested positive for COVID. They told us that we have not had direct contact with that person, but we have had contact with people who had contact with that person. So we can assume we had contact. Mm. And they're like, oh, you don't have to quarantine. It's okay. I was like, no, I'm staying in my apartment all weekend. So fuck that shit.
That's so weird, though, because the election's over and we were told this would just magically disappear.
Right? COVID's magically gone now.
Like November 4th, this thing was supposed to be done.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Because it's just a mystery.
Right. It's weird. That didn't just disappear.
Yeah. Go figure, right? Viruses just simply don't go away.
Oh, my goodness.
Right.
Crazy.
But Jessica, where can our listeners get in contact with you?
I am on Twitter at JessIGuess90. I also have a Twitter that I don't check that much for Black Girls Guide to Horror. I do have a blog called Black Girls Guide to Horror, but as of right now, it's under construction. I'm changing some things around so that it looks better, more professional, and that I can publish a little bit more on there. But by the time this comes out, it should be. I hope it's done by the time this comes out. But yeah, so you can find me at blackgirlsguidetohorror.com and Twitter. I think those are the two places. I don't really keep up with any other social media. So that's it.
All right. And Matt, where can listeners get in touch with you?
I am on Twitter at BrandonBergDM.
Mike, what about you?
They can find me on Twitter at MikeH5856 or my website, michaelpatrickhicks.com.
And you can contact me at Rudy53088 on Twitter. Make sure to follow our podcast, Add Into Staring. And be sure to give us a review and rating on all the social media or all the streaming platforms. They help us out in the algorithm, and it helps spread the abyss around everywhere. This is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.
Like there's no tomorrow.
Hello, podcast addicts and curious listeners. Dr. Galvanic's Odd Tales is a narrated podcast with dark, thrilling, and mysterious stories. In each episode, Dr. Galvanic's Odd Tales will take you through the mysteries of the Australian outback, lead you into a remote corner of the galaxy, or it will accompany you through a mind-bending nightmare. You can find Dr. Galvanic's Odd Tales on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Subscribe to the show so you won't miss another episode. See you out there.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.